3 times a week, I bled. It wasn't a choice. It was a necessity. The dialysis machine sucked my blood, purified it, and returned it to my body. A survival ritual that turned my life into a calendar of pain, nausea, and endless fatigue. And him, he was laughing. With my sister, the woman who grew up with me, who shared my toys, my clothes, my childhood secrets, was the same one who held his hand while I fought for my life. The same man who swore to be by my side in sickness and in health. The same one who kissed my forehead when we found out my kidneys were failing. They thought I didn't know. They thought I was too busy trying to survive to notice the looks, the disguised touches, the deleted messages. As if the disease had taken not only my kidneys, but also my ability to see the truth. I found out I was sick shortly before turning 43. It was during a routine checkup. One of those you do almost out of obligation, without expecting anything serious to show up. But it did. My kidneys were functioning at less than 15% capacity. Chronic renal failure, end stage, words that fell like stones on my organized life, my 18-year marriage, my routine as a mother of 2 teenagers. I stood firm. I didn't fall apart as everyone expected. I took the tests, accepted the dialysis, reorganized my life around that machine that, 3 times a week, kept me alive. I smiled at my children, saying it was just a phase, that soon I would be on the transplant list, that everything would be fine, and him, he said he was with me, that he loved me, that it was just a difficult phase, that we would overcome together, as we always did with all the obstacles that life put in our way. I believed. I wanted to believe. After all, he was the father of my children. The man I met when we were both still students. Him in engineering, me in literature. The man with whom I built a life, a home, a family. How could I not believe when he said he still saw me as the woman he fell in love with, even with the lost pounds, the dull hair, the deep dark circles the illness gave me. And she was my younger sister, my only sister, the one who always needed me, who always came crying on my shoulder when a relationship ended, when a job didn't work out, when life seemed too unfair. The same one that now came to visit me after dialysis sessions, bringing flowers, magazines, smiles that I thought were of comfort, of support, of fraternal love. On session days, I would come home exhausted, so tired that I could barely climb the stairs of our house, my body aching, head throbbing, soul just asking for a little peace, and I would find the house empty. Or almost. Raphael, my eldest son, was usually locked in his room, with his headphones on and his books. Marina, the youngest, sometimes was at a friend's house, sometimes arrived later from school. And Paolo, my husband, he said that he went out to clear his head, that it was hard to see me like this, that he needed some time, that he would be back soon. And he did come back, yes. Smelling of a perfume I knew very well, the same one I had given my sister as a present last Christmas, and she came to visit, with juice, with laughter, with that look that I now know how to decipher, a look of pity mixed with guilt, a look of someone who knew she was betraying me, but justified herself thinking that I was already living on borrowed time, that I wouldn't miss him that much, being too occupied with fighting to live one more day. In the beginning, I refused to believe it. I made excuses, justifications, alternative explanations for the accumulating evidence. The perfume? She hugged him when she arrived. It's normal for it to linger. The coinciding schedules? Mere coincidence. The muffled laughter on the phone? Problems at work that he didn't want to tell me about to avoid worrying me. I became an expert at lying to myself, an artist of denial. because admitting the truth would be to admit that, in addition to losing my health, I was losing my marriage. And my sister, all at once. It was too much to bear. One day, I got home early from the clinic. The session had been interrupted because my blood pressure dropped too much. Nothing serious, the doctors said, but it was better to go home and rest. The taxi left me at the door. I climbed the porch steps with difficulty, as always, placed the key in the lock, and I heard it. Muffled laughter, soft music, his voice saying something I couldn't make out. Her voice, responding with a laugh I'd known since childhood. My knees weakened before I even turned the key. A part of me wanted to run away, go back to the taxi, go anywhere, pretend I was never there, that I never heard, that I never knew. But I went into my own home, into the crime scene that had been committed against me for months, maybe years. They were in the living room, my blanket on the floor, the one my mother made before she died, the one I used on days when the cold seemed to come from within, not outside. On it, clothes scattered, 2 half-empty wine glasses, and them, partially dressed, frozen like statues when they saw me standing in the doorway. She ran, grabbed her blouse, pulled her legs into her pants, left through the back without saying a word, cowardly to the end, without an apology, without an explanation, without looking into my eyes. He explained himself, or tried to. He said it was a moment of weakness, that he was overwhelmed, that the pressure of seeing me sick, of taking care of the children, of maintaining the house and the job, was too much, that it didn't mean anything, that he loved me, that we could get through this. I stood still, looking at him as if he were a stranger, and he was, a stranger wearing the face of the man I loved, using the same words that had comforted me so many times, now empty of any truth. But the pain didn't come from them. It wasn't about what they did, although that was devastating in itself. The pain came from me, from the woman I had become, from the person who accepted less than she deserved, who convinced herself that because she was sick, she should be grateful for any crumbs of attention, who believed that her worth as a woman, as a wife, as a human being, had diminished along with her kidney functions. I had been bleeding inside, long before the needle. I didn't scream. I didn't break things. I didn't make a scene. Maybe he expected that. Maybe that would relieve him in some twisted way, to see my anger, my pain exploding outward, so he could then comfort me, ask for my forgiveness, convince me to stay. Instead, I climbed the stairs with the same difficulty as always. I entered our room. No, my room, for it was no longer ours, and closed the door. I took a long shower, letting the water wash away the tears that finally came. I put on clean pajamas, lay down in bed, and pretended to sleep when he came in, hours later. For months, I was the woman who pretended not to know, who continued the routine as if nothing had changed, who smiled at the children, went to dialysis sessions, came back home, cooked when she had the strength, asked about his day when they sat down for dinner. It was easier to swallow tears than to change everything. Easier to pretend I believed in his flimsy excuses, in his sudden exits, in his increasingly rare and mechanical touches. Easier than facing the looks of pity, the children's questions, the neighbors' gossip, the shame of admitting that in addition to being sick, I was being betrayed, and by my own sister. I paid bills, even without being able to work as before. I managed the house with the little energy I had left after the sessions. I took care of the children, their emotional needs, their problems at school, their doubts about the future. I literally donated my blood 3 times a week to stay alive, to continue being a mother, to continue being, what? A wife, a sister, Those parts of me had already died. I just didn't have the courage to bury them. Meanwhile, they played at love behind my back, not just in my house when I was at the clinic, but in other places too. I found out later. Restaurants, motels, at her house, places where they were seen, where people who knew me saw them together, where my name was whispered with pity. Poor thing, so sick and still goes through this. My sister stopped visiting me. She said she was busy with a new job. I pretended to believe her, as I pretended in everything else. But once, when I called her needing help, an urgent medical prescription that needed to be picked up, and Paolo was at work, she didn't answer. I called him. He didn't answer either. I called his work. They said he had left earlier, to take care of his sick wife. The irony made me laugh, a dry laugh, without humor, which soon turned into tears. One day, I asked for strength, but not from him, or her, or from any of the friends who had distanced themselves. Perhaps for not knowing how to deal with my illness. Perhaps for not wanting to take sides in the drama that everyone but me seemed to know about. I asked God. In the silence of my room, in the loneliness of dawn, with the children sleeping and the other side of the bed empty, he no longer even bothered to invent excuses not to sleep at home. God, I whispered in the dark, give me strength, not to live. The machine already does that for me. Give me strength to have dignity again, to remember who I am, to not lose myself in what they did to me. And he answered me, not with a voice from heaven, not with an instant miracle, but with a certainty that grew inside me, strong like a tree breaking through asphalt, a certainty that came in the form of words that seemed to be spoken directly to my heart. You weren't born to accept the least, my daughter. You are a seed that grows even in the desert. And I got up, not with hatred, although it was there, buried under layers of pain, not with vengeance, although a part of me wished they could feel at least a bit of what I felt. I got up with dignity, with the renewed certainty that, even ill, even dependent on a machine to live, I was still a complete human being. I still deserved respect. I still deserved love, true love, not cheap imitations. The next morning, when he returned, hair wet from the shower he took at her house, dark circles from the poorly slept night that was probably not spent sleeping, I was already up, dressed, with a small suitcase by my side. I'm going to Mom's house, I announced just like that. Mom had died years ago, but the house was still there, closed up, waiting for us to decide what to do with it. I had the keys. I had the deed with my name and my sister's. I had the right to seek refuge there. But why? He asked, feigning surprise, as if he didn't know exactly why. Because my illness might have taken my kidneys, but it didn't take my dignity. And you and her, you thought it did, You thought I was less of a woman, less of a person, less worthy of respect, because of the tubes and needles and scars. You thought you could play with me, deceive me, betray me, because I was too busy trying not to die to notice. He turned pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but I raised my hand, stopping him. I don't want to hear any more lies. I've heard enough. The kids already know. I talked to them last night. Raphael is coming with me. Marina will stay with you for now. It was their choice. Clara, please, he began, but his voice faltered. There was nothing to say. There was no way to defend the indefensible. You will receive the divorce papers next week. I'm not asking for anything more than what's fair. I don't want to fight. I don't want drama. I just want peace to focus on what matters. My health, my children, my soul. I left the house with a suitcase and a certainty. Whoever betrays a sick person is already sick inside. A sickness of the soul. A rottenness of character that no machine can cleanse, that no transplant can cure. My mother's house was small but welcoming. It smelled of mold and abandonment, but also of good memories. of a childhood before the betrayals, before the illnesses, before the disappointments. Raphael, my 17-year-old son, was a force of nature in those first days. He cleaned, organized, shopped, prepared my food following the diet prescribed by the doctors rigorously. "Mom," he said one night, as we were having dinner in the small kitchen that still had the floral wallpaper my mother had put up decades ago, "I'm proud of you." I looked up, surprised. My teenage son, usually so reserved, so sparing with words, especially words of affection. "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Because you didn't let them win. You didn't let them define who you are." I smiled, with tears in my eyes, because he was right. I hadn't allowed it. Not until the end, at least. It had taken a long time. Yes, I had suffered in silence more than I should have. I had swallowed my pain for too long. But in the end, I had chosen myself. I had chosen truth, dignity, and rebuilding. My sister tried to call me a week later. I didn't answer. She tried again the next day, and the next. She left voicemail messages that I didn't listen to. She sent text messages that I didn't read. Finally, she showed up at our mother's doorstep, red-eyed, face swollen from crying. Raphael answered. I heard his firm voice from the kitchen where he was making my tea. "My mother doesn't want to see you now. Maybe never. And neither do I." Simple as that. Direct. No room for arguments or justifications. The door closed, and with it, a chapter of my life. Today, I still do dialysis. 3 times a week, 4 hours per session. My blood still leaves my body, passes through a machine that does the work my kidneys can no longer do and returns purified. I still get tired easily. I still have bad days, when the nausea doesn't go away, when the blood pressure drops, when my body feels too heavy to carry. But I no longer bleed for those who don't see me. I don't give my energy, my time, my love to those who don't deserve it. I don't allow their betrayal to define my worth. I don't let the illness be greater than my will to live, not just survive, but live fully, with purpose and meaning. Because God taught me, on that night when I cried out for strength, that the blood I shed was not in vain. It was redemption. It was the purification not just of my body, but of my life. But it was the removal of the toxins that were poisoning me. Not only those that my kidneys could no longer filter, but those that my soul carried. Doubt about my worth, the acceptance of disrespect, the normalization of betrayal. I am on the transplant list now. The wait is long, uncertain. I might receive a kidney tomorrow, or in 10 years, or never. But this uncertainty no longer defines me. It doesn't paralyze me. It doesn't diminish me. I've gone back to studying, online, at my own pace. I'm finishing the specialization I abandoned when I got sick. I write, on good days, a book that may never be published, but that is my way of processing, of turning pain into something beautiful, of making sense of the suffering. Marina, my daughter, comes to visit me on weekends. At first it was strange. She seemed torn between loyalty to her father and love for me, but slowly, we found our way back to each other. She told me months later that Paolo and my sister are no longer together, that it ended poorly, with fights and mutual accusations. She said he used her, Marina reported, with that mix of wisdom and innocence that only teenagers can have. And he said she seduced him. Pathetic, isn't it? As if neither of them was an adult, responsible for their own choices. I nodded, without commenting. There was nothing to say. They were reaping what they had sown, the bitter harvest of seeds of betrayal. As for me, I'm harvesting other things, the peace of a clear conscience, the warmth of my children's love, the satisfaction of rediscovering parts of myself that were silenced, by illness, by marriage, by others' expectations. The simple joy of a sunset seen from the porch, of a book read without haste, of a cup of tea shared with a true friend. And if you are going through something like this, if you are being betrayed while battling an illness, depression, any struggle that seems too big to face alone, remember, betrayal is about the one who betrays, about their voids, their weaknesses, their wrong choices. It's not about you. It's not about your worth. It's not about how much you deserve to be loved. But getting up, that's your choice. Recognizing your worth, even when others don't. Demanding respect, even when it seems easier to accept less. Starting over, even when the road ahead seems scary and uncertain. And even while bleeding, in your veins, in your soul, in your heart, you can still bloom. You can still find beauty in the scars. You can still transform your pain into something greater than yourself. You can still be the tree that grows in the asphalt, cracking the concrete, proving that life is stronger than any adversity. I know this now. I know it in my skin, in my blood, in my bones. And you can know it too. You can discover this truth for yourself, not in others' validation, not in the acceptance of those who hurt you, but in you, in your core, in your spirit, in your essence that no one, neither illness nor betrayal nor abandonment, can touch or tarnish. You are greater than your pain. You are stronger than your weakness. You are more valuable than the treatment you received. And you deserve, oh, how you deserve, every drop of true love the universe has to offer. Do you know what I discovered in these 2 years since I left that house? That starting over is not a straight line. There are days when I wake up, and the weight of what happened seems to have completely disappeared. And there are mornings when I open my eyes, and the first thing I feel is that familiar pain, that tightness in my chest that seems to say, "Remember me? I'm still here." Yesterday was one of those days. I was in the dialysis clinic waiting room, absent-mindedly flipping through an old magazine when I saw them. Paolo and my sister, Christina, entering the doctor's office across the street together. She was holding his arm, as if needing support. He was carrying a folder of medical tests. I knew by the way she walked, by her downcast look, that something was wrong. A part of me, the part that still harbors remnants of resentment, wanted to feel satisfaction. I wanted to think, it's karma. It's life collecting what you both did. But another part, the one I've been carefully cultivating, felt only a distant echo of sadness. Not exactly for them, but for the fragility of everything. For how life can change in an instant. How health can slip through our fingers. How relationships built on lies inevitably collapse. I don't know what happened to her. I didn't ask anyone. I don't want to know. Some secrets belong to others, and I've learned to respect those boundaries. Not to invade other people's lives, just as I don't want them invading mine. What I do know is that seeing the two of them there, in that situation, didn't evoke in me what it would have evoked 2 years ago. There was no anger, no desire for confrontation, none of that sharp pain that once consumed me. There was only peace, the peace of someone who is no longer tied to that story, of someone who no longer defines their worth by the actions of those who betrayed them. This is what I want you to understand if you're going through something similar. Forgiveness is not for them. It's for you. It's not about forgetting what they did or minimizing the pain they caused. It's about freeing yourself from the power that pain has over you. It's about choosing not to carry that weight anymore. Not because they deserve to be forgiven. Perhaps they don't. But because you deserve peace. It took me a while to understand this. To realize that forgiveness is not weakness. It is not surrender. It is not saying that what they did was acceptable. It is strength. It is a refusal to allow their actions to continue to hurt you, long after they have left your life. One of the nurses at the dialysis clinic asked me the other day, "Clara, how do you manage to keep this serenity?" How do you not let yourself be consumed by bitterness after everything you've been through? I told her about that night when I asked God for strength. About how, in the weeks that followed, I realized I had two choices: to live as a victim of betrayal, defined by pain and anger, or to live as the protagonist of my own story, defined by my choices, my courage, my renewed purpose. And you chose to be the protagonist, she concluded, with a smile. I choose. Every day, I corrected, because it is not a single definitive decision. It is a daily practice, a discipline, an exercise in self-love and self-preservation that requires constancy, even when it hurts, even when it's difficult, even when it would be easier to plunge into resentment. Raphael started college this year. Medicine. He says he was inspired by my condition, that he wants to understand more about kidney diseases, and that he dreams of one day helping people like me. When he told me about his decision, I cried, not from sadness, but from a joy so profound that it bordered on pain, because I realized that even this, my illness, my suffering, could generate something beautiful, that nothing is wasted when we look with the right eyes. Marina is finishing high school. She still divides her time between her father's house and mine, but she spends more and more nights here. Your house has peace, Mom, she once told me. It doesn't have that tension, that unspoken thing hanging in the air. She is right. This house, my mother's house, which gradually became mine, has peace. It's not perfect. The roof needs repairs. The garden is always a bit wilder than it should be. The walls need a new coat of paint. But it has peace. It has truth. It has the imperfect beauty of real things, not the polished falseness of appearances that we value so much. As for my health, it's still the same. I still depend on dialysis to live. I am still waiting for a transplant that may never come. I still have limitations, pains, days when my body feels like a prison, not a home. But I've learned not to let the illness define who I am, not to become the woman with the sick kidneys, just as I had once become the betrayed wife. We are always more than our labels, more than our wounds, more than the boxes others try to fit us into. A neighbor started coming over to have tea with me on Tuesday afternoons, a widow, a few years older than me. At first, I think she came out of pity, the sick, abandoned, lonely woman, but soon she discovered that I was much more than that I had stories to tell, laughs to share, wisdom to offer. Now we are true friends, not out of necessity or convenience, but by choice, by affinity, by genuine pleasure in each other's company. It's funny how life surprises us, how, when one door closes, even violently, even if it hurts us in the process, others open. Not immediately, not without effort on our part, but they open. And what we find beyond them is often richer, more truthful, more aligned with who we really are than what we left behind. I won't lie and say there aren't difficult days. There are. Days when the memory of betrayal returns like an unexpected wave, knocking the wind out of me. Days when loneliness weighs heavily, when I miss having someone to share not only the pain, but also the small joys of everyday life. Days when I wonder if I'll ever trust again, love again, give myself to someone without fear. But even on difficult days, I know I chose the right path. I chose dignity over denial, truth over lies, reconstruction over the continuous destruction of my self-esteem, my self-love, my peace. And you can choose too, even if you're bleeding, in your veins like me, or just in your soul like so many of us. You can choose life, true life, not just survival. You can choose to bloom, not just to endure. You can choose to be a protagonist, not a victim. You can choose the light, even when the darkness seems more familiar, safer, more comfortable. The path won't be easy, nor quick, nor linear. There will be setbacks, doubts, moments when you'll wonder if it's worth it. But it is worth it. Oh, how it's worth it. Because on the other side of the pain, beyond the dark valley of betrayal and loss, there's a version of you that's stronger, wiser, fuller than you ever imagined you could be. I am discovering this version of myself, one day at a time, and I hope you discover yours too. If this moved you, the next video will move you even more. Click here and keep watching with me.